Okay, before we dive into the planning system that I personally use and that I find helpful, I do want to give a few disclaimers about planning systems in general and about this specific planning system. Okay, so first of all, not every system works for every person. There are some guiding principles that are usually really helpful. For example, I don't think there's probably any planning system out there that says you should just take all your tasks for the day and look at them all, stare them straight in the face, and treat them all as equally important, right? Every planning system, to a certain extent, acknowledges the fact that we have limits and we have to make choices throughout the day. And so having a plan in place can help you make those choices a little bit easier, a little bit more quicker, and a little bit more thoughtfully, because you are taking the time to plan in advance instead of trying to decide on the fly when everything could be overwhelming or urgent or just very unclear. So I'm personally a huge fan of them. I also know some people say, you shouldn't use a planner, you should use a calendar, or like my husband actually uses project management software instead of a paper planner. Some people use Notion. There are lots of products and systems out there. So don't be afraid to experiment and just figure out what works out for you. What works for me may not work for you. The other thing that I think that is key with any planning system that you do try is that you keep in mind that the planning system is there to help you and to serve you. It is not there for you to become a slave to it. For me, I love being organized and having my day planned. I love checking things off in my little boxes and getting the dopamine rush that gives. But I have to be careful, because if there's a day where I've planned too much or things come up, life just happens, and I'm not able to check every single thing off my list, I can sometimes feel bad about myself. In fact, I often feel bad about myself in those situations. And if your planning system, it has gotten to the point that you are consistently feeling bad about yourself because you weren't able to finish every single thing that you wrote down, that probably means that you need to either reevaluate the system or reevaluate how you are using the system, because your planning system exists to serve you. And if it's not working for you, if it's not helping you to reach your goals, that either means, one, that you're adding too much to it for your current capacity, right? Because our capacity varies from day to day, season to season. We are humans. Or two, that maybe you haven't found the right system yet that works for you, because you're not able to do the things that you set out to do and you're feeling bad about yourself as a result. If you can keep in mind that that system exists to serve you, then that's going to help you a lot in figuring out what is and isn't working for you. It's also going to help you if you do have a day here and there, as we all do, where you're not able to do everything. That way you're able to prioritize sort of in the moment and say, okay, these are the most important things. I'm going to try to focus on those and get as much done as I can on those. And then the rest, I will rearrange my schedule for another day, or I will reevaluate and say, does this really have to get done this week? Does this really have to get done at all? All of those things are super important to be able to do. And so you just need to keep in mind that this planning system is for you. It's for your good and your benefit. It is not there as a taskmaster to tell you what you have to be doing and make you feel bad if you don't. As you know, I have a lot of anxiety at times, and so having a planner for me is really helpful. It gives me a place to write everything down that I need to do so that I know that I'm not forgetting anything. And then I schedule a time to do all those things that need to be done so that I don't just keep thinking about them throughout the week and going, oh yeah, I need to do that. I need to do that. I need to do that. When am I going to do that? I don't have any time. Instead, my planner tells me exactly when I have time. And it also gives me the opportunity to look at my week as a whole and say, okay, am I being realistic here about what I'm expecting to accomplish? Am I actually able to do all of this, or do I need to ask somebody for help? Do I need to eliminate some tasks? What do I need to do to make sure that this is actually something that I can do? And what are my most important goals at this moment so that I can make sure that I'm making progress toward those? Okay, so now that we are starting out with the right foundation there regarding planners, let me dive into the planning system that I'm currently using and that's working for me. If you have a planning system that's different from mine, I would love to hear about it. I am so interested in learning about these kinds of things and what works for different people. So leave me a comment. I would love to read about it. Okay, couple things about my planning system. And I'm just going to give you the brief overview in this video. I'm not going to dive into showing you it. If you ever want a tour of my planner, I'd be happy to do one of those, but I think I need to do kind of more of a screen record situation there. Well, I guess it wouldn't be a screen record because it'd be on my paper, but I would have to figure out the camera situation a little bit differently. So I'm just going to describe it as best as I can. I might insert a few diagrams here and there, but we're just going to talk about it in broad terms. And then if you want like a walkthrough sometime, I'd be happy to do that. Just let me know. Okay, so for my planning system, I'm a paper planner girly. And I know that is not everyone's jam. That's totally okay. But for me, I try to keep my planning time and my work time separate. I usually plan my week on Sunday nights before I log in on Monday morning so that I kind of know what's coming up and I'm not getting that slow start on Monday because I haven't even organized my thoughts. So on Sunday night, I will get out my paper planner and I will write down, I'll just brain dump everything that I need to do, then I'll schedule those things accordingly. I'll leave some slots for things that inevitably come up during the week, but I have my paper planner and I'm working on that. When I've tried to do it online, it tends to get me sucked into my email inbox and my calendar a lot more than when I'm writing down with a pen. And I love office supplies, pens, and paper. They're so centering for me. So I just have an 8.5 by 11 bullet journal that I use and some pens, and then I stuck a sticker on the front, and that is what I used. You can go out and buy a planner that's pre-formatted. If you do that, there's a whole range of prices. The one that I have bought and used and that I find the most helpful is the Full Focus Planner. It's a little bit more on the pricey side of that spectrum because it is about $40 every quarter, but it's very thorough. It has a lot of room for planning and your schedule and notes. It's just this all-in-one thing, and it's super good, but for me right now, where I am in life, it's also a little bit too detailed. There's a lot to fill out every single week if you want to, and I have trouble not filling all of that out, especially when I'm paying that much money, and that just became a very time-consuming thing for me. So I went ahead and simplified my process, and used just a plain bullet journal that I got off of Amazon. I do like having a spiral binding, and I do like writing with nice pens, so I paid a little bit more for both of those things, but I still think my all-in cost was like between $20 and $30, and that's gonna last me a year or more. Another thing that's probably helpful for you to know is I am not one of those people who just schedules every single thing on her calendar. I have my, digital calendar where I, keep track of appointments and schedules and meetings and all of those things. It's really easy to send people invites or to create little tasks and things on there, but I primarily use it for meetings. I don't use it as a task manager because I've tried that in the past, and first of all, it stresses me out when I go to look at my calendar to see when a meeting is, and everything is full, and there's no white space, there's no room to breathe. That stresses me out a little bit. I would much rather put the tasks that I have to do in the calendar and then in my planner, and then just make kind of a note about, okay, we need to do this in the morning because I have meetings all afternoon or something like that. The second thing is, sometimes tasks take longer than you estimate that they will. At least for me, that's the case. And so when I would use my calendar and block out time for those things, it was always helpful. But if I didn't have another time blocked out to finish the thing up that I didn't get finished up in the first time block, then I would just be stressing the whole time about when am I going to get this finished? So for me, having my list in my planner and then having my calendar with all my meetings and appointments and any sort of schedule related things is good. I do think it's important to remember what's going on in your calendar when you are planning what you're going to do for your week. So I do usually pull my calendar up on my phone, but as much as possible during the week, I tend to keep them separate because if I'm in a meeting or I have one coming up, I look at my calendar, I get the link, I do that stuff. If it's time to do a task, I look at my planner and I see what I'm supposed to be doing for that day. Okay, so my weekly process, I've already mentioned a little bit of this, but I'll just go over it briefly for you. The first step is the brain dump. This usually happens on Sunday nights. Sometimes it happens on Mondays in the morning because I don't get to it on Sunday nights. And you can do it whenever works for you. Honestly, I think some people do it at the end of the day on Friday, just so that they remember everything that they have to do. I usually do it in 3 parts. I do things that I'm grateful for from the previous week. That just helps set a positive tone, helps me look back over the past week with fondness and think about things that I got done or that I got to experience. The second part is my list of tasks that I need to do for work. I write everything down there. And that can be, if you work full-time, just write down all the tasks you need to do for work. When I worked full-time, I would write down that. I would write down any freelance projects, those sort of things that would all go under work so that I knew what I had to be doing. And then the third one is a to-do list for life things. So this can be not fun things like, tasks that need to be done around the house to clean up or whatever. This can also be fun things that you want to remember that you're doing or that you need to prepare for. So for example, I might put packing for an upcoming trip on that list, but I might also put clean the bathroom. So it all goes on one 8.5 by 11 page. That's usually enough space for me. I do sometimes have to do do 2 columns for the list, but usually just 1 is fine or close to fine. Okay. Then I flip the page over. On the back, I just write notes and quotes. That's a place where I can record anything interesting or significant that I come across throughout the week. So a lot of times, if I'm reading a blog post or an email by somebody and they say something that I think is insightful or that I want to follow up on, I'll write that down. Also, if I'm in a meeting and somebody says something that I'm like, oh, that's really going to affect the direction of that thing I'm working on or, our company going forward, I will write that down as well. It's just for very significant things. I also have a separate notebook that I keep for kind of more the minutia of if I'm taking minutes or anything like that, or I use a Google Doc. But for the notes and quotes section, I just have that right there on my planner in case I need to take notes really quick or in case there's something I want to remember to go back and look at and I don't want to put it in one of the places that I'm afraid will get more lost. And then the next page, I do kind of my day-by-day planning. I do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the weekend. So I have 6 slots, 3 on the front, 3 on the back of the next page. And then I have 3 big check boxes, and those are my main 3 tasks that I need to do that day. Normally those are work-related because usually the stakes are a little bit higher on work-related projects, but you get to make the call on that. That's the beauty of a planner, is it's about your life and the things that you want to accomplish. So you get to make the call. And then I do smaller bullet points for things I don't want to forget or that I'd like to do once those things are finished. When I'm writing those tasks in, I will take from my to-do lists from both work and life. I will fill them in priority order, and I try to make sure that everything is filled in. And if I realize that there's just not space for everything, I make sure that I take a step back and I prioritize. Now, once that's all filled in, I also will often add an AM or PM or maybe just a general time guideline so that I know when I was planning on working that. I know that my energy levels fluctuate throughout the day, so there are certain tasks that are better to do first thing. There are certain tasks that are better to do in the afternoon when I normally have a little bit of a dip. So if there's something that requires a lot of concentration or a lot of really deep thought and focus, I will do that earlier or before a meeting. And then if I have a meeting and then I have some time after to work on something, or if it's the afternoon, I will usually pick something that takes a little bit less brain power, but still needs to be done to move the needle forward. Okay, so once everything's filled in and I have a few general time slots assigned, and I say general time slots because I don't really find it helpful to assign, I'm going to work on this from 2 to 3, because what if it takes longer than 1 hour? So I try to give general time slots. And then if I do have to be super specific because I have a packed day, I'll write that in. And then I'll just make sure that I leave some time later in the week to still get those things done. So anyway, once I have all of those things written down and arranged on my planner, I try to leave a few blank spaces as well, just for the things that inevitably come up throughout the week, because whether you are the CEO or the very bottom of the list employee, things happen and you have to change your plans pretty much every day, if not every week. So try to make sure and I leave a few slots just so that I have some flexibility. At this point, you may think you're done if you've filled in, your stuff in whatever planning system that you have. And I did too for a long time. I thought I was done and I would go, okay, cool, I've got a plan, shut the book, move on with my evening. But this is the point where you actually have the ability to make the most impact in how you're able to tackle this list throughout the week. You have the opportunity to look at this list and this beautiful schedule before life comes in and messes it up. And you have the opportunity to sit with it for a minute and say, okay, is this something that I can realistically do this week? Make sure that you are taking in all of the tasks that you have, as well as any calendar items, like meetings or things like that. And picture yourself working through these tasks. Think through how long each one is approximately going to take. Think about who you're going to need help from on the projects in order to get the information or the help that you need to get them over the finish line. And just take a minute to check yourself and make sure that your goals are even realistic before you set out. If you discover that they're not realistic, there are a lot of things you can do. First of all, you can cut some things. Maybe you go, okay, this is a really, really busy week at work. I am not going to have time to make all these gourmet meals that I was planning on making. That's a silly example, right? Because probably you're not making gourmet meals if it's a busy week at work, because you know that. But you may be able to look at your personal list and say, okay, because it's a busy week at work and I know that it's only this week, it's not every week, I'm going to go ahead and trim some personal things that I would normally like to do during the week. You may decide that you don't want to do that, and instead you look at your work task list and you go, it's a really busy week for me, but I have a teammate who has a little bit lighter load this week. I'm going to reach out to them and see if they can get me some help on these projects. It's also really important at this stage to consider your current mental and emotional load. There are things at work and things in life that place a heavier burden on you than other times. And so it is really helpful to be able to look at your list and think about, how you are coping with what's going on in life right now. And just make sure that you are being kind to yourself in what you are asking yourself to accomplish. This is something that I've been learning recently, and it's been a very helpful mindset shift for me as I've been trying to work through how quickly I can realistically get things done when I'm struggling, when I'm having a hard time. If you see some lists as you're looking through your days, if you see some list items that aren't marked as top priority, but that you think probably should be top priority, it's okay to go ahead and switch those things out, cross one thing out and switch it out. The trap you have to avoid, though, is adding more important things and acting like everything is important, because it's not. It might feel like it at the time, but not everything is equally important. Everything can be important to you, or everything can be important to your boss, but not everything is equally important. And so it's important when you are thinking through setting your priorities for the week, that you think through, okay, what is actually important versus what is just nice to have done, right? It's also important to think through who is setting these priorities. Am I setting these? Am I putting undue pressure on myself? Is somebody else setting these? And then based on what that answer is, maybe working with that person or thinking it through yourself in order to make sure that you're getting the right things done if you have to choose. And then finally, if you are really struggling to set these priorities, I go ahead and just think through what is going to be the most important thing to you that you've done in the next 5 to 10 years. And if there's something on your list this week that you go, wow, I'm really going to remember that's going to be really meaningful for me, make sure that you protect that at all costs. Make sure that you get that project moved further toward the finish line, or that you go to that concert, or that you go to your kids' game. Make sure that whatever that thing is, that you protect that. Because a lot of the things that are on your list this week, you're not going to remember in a year, much less 5 or 10. Okay, so I hope that helped. That's the system that I use. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into setting priorities, because I do think that is so key for making sure that your planning system is working for you and not the other way around. So you can look for those videos coming soon. But in the meantime, please leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this video. Let me know what planning system you like to use, any tips that you're going to implement, and let me know if you have any ideas for videos that you might like to see from me related to planning or planners in the future. All right, See you later.